Hello, my name is Logan, and I did my semester project on becoming a best buddy. So for this project, I chose to get involved in an organization called Best Buddies. There's a local chapter of this organization here in Provo. It's done through BYU, so I got involved with YServe. So what is Best Buddies? Best Buddies is a nonprofit organization, and it works primarily through pairing up individuals with some sort of intellectual or developmental disability with an individual without a disability. So they serve all kinds of individuals with on any spectrum of disability, including Down syndrome, autism, speech delays, social deficit disorders, hearing impairments, any disability that you can think of that's intellectual or developmental, they serve it. So this works by pairing someone up with an individual, so it promotes friendship, promotes this like unique one-on-one friendship that a lot of individuals with disabilities do not have because there's a big problem with isolation of disabled individuals. Best Buddies does a lot of community outreach. They get a lot of people that they serve with individual disabilities, and they bring them together for community programs, big social events, and they also place people with disabilities in leadership positions within Best Buddies and within their local chapters. They also do employment integration, so they help people with disabilities find appropriate employment. But the way that I got involved with Best Buddies is through this kind of one-on-one friendship thing that they typically do. So here's a little bit about why I wanted to do Best Buddies. Currently, I'm on a career path in applied behavioral analysis, which if you do not know what that is, it's usually called ABA. ABA therapy is typically for kids with autism, but they also serve a lot of other disabilities. So as an ABA therapist, I've worked with kids with Down syndrome as well, and mostly autism, and then there's some other disabilities as well. So I've always been interested in the topic of developmental disabilities, and particularly with inclusion. This is because there's a big problem with inclusion in Utah specifically. So some states really struggle with learning how to integrate kids with disabilities into a mainstream school environment, which is kind of the ultimate goal of a lot of schools, is to give kids with disabilities the care that they need and the specified care that they need, while also learning how to keep them integrated and involved socially. Lack of inclusion is a problem for everyone, not just the child with Down syndrome or with autism or with any other kind of developmental delay or problem or disability. This is because not only does the person with the disability end up feeling really isolated, but also the child, the neurotypical child, does not get the interaction that they need with someone who may be different from them. So they grow up and they don't know how to treat an individual with disability. So this is something I'm really passionate about. This is something that I'm learning a lot about as I study ABA and as I prepare for a master's program in ABA. I love talking about inclusion, so I figured for this project I would do something kind of along the lines of developmental disabilities and learning how to be more inclusive. So I thought, what better option than to really be approximating myself with someone with a disability, becoming their friend, and learning how I can best be an inclusive individual in my community. So a little bit of more information on this. The National Center for Learning Disabilities found that segregation of neurotypical children from children with some sort of intellectual or developmental disability is very common in Utah, and this is a big problem, and this really motivated me to get involved here in Utah for this project. So here's a little bit about my experience. I worked with this young man named Dustin. Dustin's a little bit older than me, and he was diagnosed with Down syndrome when he was born. This is all shared with permission from his parents, so these photos are shared with permission, and this story is shared with permission. Through Best Buddies, I got paired up with Dustin, and I did weekly activities with him. So this was 1 to 2 hours a week. And I really just started by getting to know his family, enjoying meals with him, playing board games, just really doing the things that he likes. So Dustin is really interested in coloring and drawing. So typically when I would go over there, he would make some sort of meal, which was awesome because he really likes to cook and he really likes to put food together or go out to eat. So he has a couple different food spots that he likes. So we would eat, he'd put together a meal, and then we would typically color with some colored pencils or paint something because he really likes art. And something that I loved about this experience is that I really got to know Dustin and his family. So he lives with his two parents, and they're wonderful and very, very kind. And by going over to Dustin's house every week to every other week for a couple hours at a time, I really got to know his family, his parents, his siblings, his nieces and nephews. They really became good friends to me, and I'm really grateful for that. So through this experience, I learned that I can really develop a real friendship with someone with a disability. This made a really meaningful impact on me and Dustin and his parents, because as I really got to know them, got to become close with them, I really found that I genuinely enjoyed Dustin's company. I honestly, thinking back how I started this as a project, I feel kind of guilty for thinking it that way, because as I started to really get to know Dustin, this didn't feel like a chore or a project or a school assignment. It just felt like me going to see a friend. Dustin is really conversational. He's really funny. He knows a lot about very specific different topics, like about food, about games, about art. And so getting to know Dustin, getting to know what he likes was really meaningful and really special to me, because I really developed a good friendship with him that I grew to really, really enjoy. So kind of at the end of this project, I realized that approximating yourself with someone with some sort of disability is really important. I grew up in a family where my parents thought it was really important to have me understand how to treat people with disabilities. And so I was always around kids with disabilities. My parents really wanted me to befriend kids with disabilities, and really get involved in this. And I really think this is why I'm on the career path that I'm on. But more importantly, I really feel like we as individuals without any disabilities can do a lot of good for people with disabilities, and they can do a lot of good to us too. So to avoid this intellectual or ableist saviorism of how great are we that we don't have a disability, that thinking is really problematic. I really feel strongly that to avoid that, we need to really approximate ourselves with individuals with disabilities and to understand how much they can do for us, as well as what we can offer to them. So Dustin's friendship means a lot to me, and this is something that I'm really excited to continue. I not only did I learn a lot about friendship through Dustin and about kindness and patience, I also learned a lot about the problem of inclusion within Utah and everywhere, but specifically in Utah. And I also learned about his disability and his diagnosis. I learned that Dustin does not see himself as being held back by any sort of disability. He's aware of his disability. He understands for the most part what that means, what his diagnosis means, but it's not something he really gives a lot of thought to or really cares a lot about. He really just enjoys every day. He is genuinely so happy. He loves spending time with his family. He's interested in cooking. He's interested in art, and he's interested in spending time outside and exercise and frozen yogurt, just to name a few kind of specific things that I learned about Dustin. He really doesn't see himself as being held back by any sort of disability. He doesn't see himself as being different from his peers at all. He loves his friends. He has neurotypical friends, and he has disabled friends that he's met through school and through Best Buddies. And he's absolutely loved their company. Dustin doesn't judge other people. Dustin is kind to other people. And I realized through spending time with Dustin that this is how I need to act. I need to be a little bit more like Dustin. So not only did I develop a really great friendship with Dustin and his family, but I also learned a lot from him. And I also really feel strongly about how important it is to teach inclusion within schools and how important it is to not separate ourselves from disabilities because of some ableist kind of standard. So there's my project. Thanks so much.